So, based on previous videos, you might be wondering, okay, so at the end of our life, okay, there's different perspectives or of what we experience, right? So you have the experience where you wake up in a room, if you will, and you have God walk in the room, and He's your doctor, and we're going to go over everything in your life together, and you're going to decide whether you go to heaven or hell, or you're reincarnated, right? So, okay, why, what's the difference between, and then there's the other ways of seeing it too. Okay, at the end of your life, you get to the Vaitarani or the Vaitarana river, the river of chaos. Okay, the river of life. Okay, that actually is the stream that you can see in the indentations that go up Kailash mountain. Okay, on the sides of the male gods that are carved on the side of the mountain. Okay, so on the side where you have, for example, at the base of the mountain, the center where you have Shiva Brahm, okay, or Bara, who started as Bara, and when his other head was added, they added the M, the civilization added his M to the name Baram, and he has his third head as well, right? Savakasi, which is his more scary head, right? Where no one wants to go, but there's the story where it's going to go there, and we hope to avoid that as we hope all the best things for all of creation always, right? So it's important to listen to what Shiva Baram says in that sense to make sure that society goes in the right direction. So basically, what it comes down to is when God tells you what to do, you do what you're told, to an extent where it makes sense, right? If it doesn't make sense, sure, question, of course. It's not a question, but for major things, when you're told to stop fighting amongst each other and to have peace now everywhere, and to also have prosperity everywhere with universal income, and to have harmony everywhere by sharing the teachings of God everywhere with everyone, right? So these are important things, right? And when you're told to do so, you have to do so because there's a reason why it needs to be done that way. It's because it's the knowledge of God that actually brings the peace, that actually brings the prosperity, the stability, and all that. Because just knowing the confirmation, documented through recordings and all these things that God did come, that God was here, that God is here, even. That when you think about it, that's actually a very reassuring thing, because when you're told, like I'm about to tell you right now, about what happens at the end of your life, right, then it's good to know that life can be eternal for good people. Okay, so so let's get back to the river. So you get to the Vaitarini River. Okay, so there's woods on the side of the river. Okay, and where is the Vaitarini River? Where are you emerging essentially on the mountain Kailash on the river? Okay, usually you're not on the mountain. Okay, but when you do emerge, okay, when you do, usually you're off the mountain. Okay, so the deities are the ones that are on Kailash mountain, right? And those that are not the deities, well, they're not on the mountain. Their mark is not on the mountain, basically, is what that means. Okay, they're not on the wall of the gods. Okay, that's how it was referred to back in the day as well, of our ancestors as well. So, but when you do pass away, okay, there's a deity that's going to take care of that and all of that process and what that takes place. So basically, when you look at the mountain, you see on the side of the mountain an indentation on the side of the mountain, like a stream that goes all the way to the top of the mountain, and that represents the Vaitarani River. Or the river of creation, and basically the different deities that are that have authority over passage over that river, right? So as you go up the river, you have different deities' faces that you can see on the mountain, and based on where they're positioned, based on that river, which also goes into the into the Damaru, the drum of Shiva, that river, the hourglass, and to Bara at the bottom of the river Okay, you have different gods, and what they do is they control their access, their level, their parallel level to the river, basically. So imagine basically they have like a dam, and basically anyone that passes, has they're a fort basically, or over the river basically, and anyone that passes has to basically get their permission or slip by basically, or something like that, to get through, to get up the river and to climb the river towards the top of the mountain, okay, towards where the older gods are, and all that. Okay, but at the same time, it's not that they're older they're at the top, because Bara at the bottom is actually the oldest, because he represents the mark of the mountain of the creator of the Kala Chakra. Okay, so so what happens when you get to the river? Okay, so when you get to the river, you're gonna pass away. Okay, and in many cultures, the visualization, the experience that you'll get is that you'll pass away and you'll get to the river. You'll always get to the river, but you'll also have other experiences sometimes. Essentially, that's what I meant. Not sometimes. So, for example, referring once again to waking up in that room and having God asking you, question you about the judgment of your heart and all this. But I'll explain how that actually comes to play. Okay, so how that essentially comes to play basically is you get to the Vaitarani River. So what happens is you emerge about midway through the mountain, bottom third um, of the mountain, and that's where humanity emerges on the river when they pass away. Okay, so there's basically trees. Okay, you're experiencing another loka, the loka of the river. Okay, and you're gonna have your body, and you're gonna basically you find yourself in trees, and you emerge from a copse of trees. Okay, from trees, and then all of a sudden there's a signpost. Okay, that has signs on it, and then you get to the river. Okay, and when you get to the river, okay, that's where you get to the river. So the river basically is very interesting. Okay, there's a lot of different people that get to the river and different types of people, and they have different reactions when they get to the river. Okay, one of the things that is important to notice is that when people there's a steady stream of people getting to the river, right? So what we have is we have one phenomenon. For example, a lot of people in Hinduism, for example, are emerging in the same in a line, right, towards the river. And as they get towards the river, they see the people in front of them jump into the river, and then the next ones jump into the river, and then a lot of them have hesitation before jumping in the river because it doesn't look like a very appealing place to jump into the river. The river is basically the river of chaos, so it's filled with energy of chaos. Okay, and we'll get back to that a little bit later. Okay, so what we have right now, you also have when you get to the river, you also have a bridge. Okay, that's there, and the bridge, it's guarded by two beings that are very odd beings. Okay, they look like they're not comfortable with how they are, or like how they're acting, or something like that. Okay, so it makes them look a little bit fishy, and I say that fondly. Okay, so what we have is we have the bridge, and the bridge is identified with the symbol of God, which is the heart, with the wavy line within it, and the pink around it, the pink heart. Okay, so basically that's the bridge, and who are those two beings on the bridge? Those are actually the Archangel of Death and his assistant. Although sometimes the Archangel of Death isn't there, he's doing other chores. He likes to do other stuff. I have a lot of fondness, and everybody deserves their downtime. But sometimes he's there, okay, and they greet you on the bridge, okay, and the bridge basically once you start, if you decide to take the bridge, they tell you if you take this bridge, you will be subjected to the judgment of God. Okay, so a lot of people right there, they back away from the bridge. Oh my God, submitting myself to the judgment of someone. I can't do that. Why would I do that? Okay, so they get back. And often, interestingly enough, it's yogis that are the most hard-headed people. And they think, why would I submit myself to the judgment of God? Okay, so the yogi, maybe he emerged from the stream of Hinduism. Okay, we have different cultures emerging, different lines around the river, okay, at different places, okay, different cultures getting to the river. And then maybe, he emerged from, for example, the line maybe of Hinduism or maybe Buddhism or something like that, okay? And basically, he gets the river and decides, I'm not going to jump into it. Oh, there's a bridge over there. I'm going to go check what that is. But he doesn't like the idea of taking the bridge and getting judged by someone. So he thinks, you know what? I'm a yogi. I've got cities, right? Special abilities, special powers here, and I can develop them here. And I noticed that, I can actually, maybe apply these to cross the river, right? Myself, right? So I don't need to submit myself to the judgment. So there's a story of a yogi that did that, and he went very into detail. He had the trees, he went to go to the trees. He built the boat from the trees, and all these things, right? And used the cities to reinforce the boat and all these things and make it resistant to the chaos energy of the river with the fire and the poison and all this stuff. And then basically he took the boat, and believe it or not, a couple of them, at least this one, he managed to cross to the other side. after a wonderful, epic journey. It's unbelievable how epic it is to cross that river. Okay, the only thing is when he got to the other side, he realized there's nothing on the other side. It's just barren landscape. Nothing's there. You just end up on the other side of the river, and on that side of the river, there's no bridge. No more bridge option. And then maybe if you're wise enough, the yogi, he might realize that in a way, maybe the judgment had started, that judgment of God that we were talking about on the bridge had started the minute he got to that loka of the river. You know, the minute that he got to that loka that's granted to him by the God that controls that level of the river, which is Bara, right? Which is Shiva Baram, right? Because he's the one who controls the heaven and hell. Okay, he's the god at the base of the mountain, the god of the mountain, the god of the gods of the mountain. Okay, and then that yogi, that wonderful yogi, realized that he had made a very bad decision where he had thought that he could have eternal life without God. Right? So, and that maybe he could even have thought, well, I didn't recognize God when I saw his bridge. I didn't recognize the angels on the bridge, but basically it comes down to he didn't have faith, right? And or basically didn't have the wisdom to basically submit himself to the judgment of the person who had created him. Okay? And sometimes, as I said, yogis can be very hard-headed, but we love them nonetheless. I'm a yogi myself. Okay? So basically, that's what happens when you get to the bridge. Now, now we have in Hinduism, for example, special practices that are done when people pass away. And actually, as Sadhguru, who I follow sometimes on YouTube, basically mentioned how those practices can bring people back from that side of the river, and that's absolutely true. And that's what happened to that yogi who ended up on that river, right? He ended up on that river, and from that river, from that side of the river, and ended up being called back to the other side of the river. Okay, and then, well, what happened to him at that point is personal, and we'll leave it at that. Okay, so that's what happens. You get to the river and then you see the bridge. Okay, so when you pass away, just remember, if you're in that line, don't necessarily follow what everyone is doing and jumping into the river, right? Into the river of chaos to be dissolved. Okay, consider taking the bridge of God. Okay, and because some people think maybe even jump in the river so you're not judged by God. But do you really think that that you're going to escape the judgment of God by jumping into a river? I don't think so. Okay, so as I said, you're being judged from the moment that you get to the realm of the Vaitarani River. Your judgment has already begun. It has already started. Okay, and you're basically, it's like the final judgment. God already knows what's going to happen to you, but right now you're having your chance to basically show that you have faith, show that you believe in God, and basically, you're allowed to be informed about this too. Right, in advance. It's not breaking. It's not making the trial any less important by telling you in advance. Okay, it's actually showing you that God cares, right? That God wants you to know about these things in advance, so that you'll be reassured and know that yes, if you're a good person, you have good stories to tell God, about your life, or even if you were a bad person, you became good, you basically got redeemed, or some people, they use the term born again. Okay, and that can mean different things to different people, but you got redeemed, you became a good person, and when you do get to the judgment of God, you'll hopefully you make that right decision. You put your hands you put your fate gladly in the hands of God, and you walk onto the bridge, because the bridge doesn't go to the other side of the river, it goes to paradise. Okay, and now I'll explain also how this falls in with reincarnation as well. Okay, so basically the bridge goes to paradise. Okay, and you have the angels that man the bridge. Okay, so basically when you get on the bridge, what happens is that's where your judgment takes place. Okay, that's where you're going to be judged. That's where your stories of your life, the things that you've done in your life, the good stories are going to get you through. And that's the judgment of your heart. So it's a different way of seeing basically the other perspective of the end of your life, where you're in that room being interrogated by God for the judgment of your heart. Okay. God's a pretty busy guy too. So don't worry. It'll be fine. Okay. So you're on the bridge, you pass the bridge. Okay, then you're going to get to heaven. Now the angels that were with you on the bridge, okay, they're going to guide you in heaven. They're going to give you basically a tour guide of heaven. That become your tour guide of heaven. And they won't show you everything. There's too much to know. But a tour at the beginning. Then you're going to be in heaven. Okay, and then you're going to meet a lot of my friends in heaven. Okay, that's basically heaven. Now, how does this all fall with jumping into the river, reincarnation, all this? Okay, and heaven, by the way, good times. Think about it this way: God created this world. Imagine all the most wonderful possibilities of this world, and understanding that He created all the options for the future. So all the most wonderful things, all the most beautiful things. Imagine that for yourself in heaven, and heaven is really wonderful. And my personal thing that's my favorite in heaven is it allows you to further develop yourself and grow and keep growing as a person, and to further dedicate yourself to different initiatives of creation. Okay, so you're not bored. Okay, but in a good way. You're not forced in any way. It's a wonderful place. So now, and yes, Jesus is in heaven. Yes. Okay. So basically, you will be able to potentially have a discussion with Jesus if sometime in heaven. But and see the angels and all this. Now how does that fall in with the reincarnation? Now, as I said, you have a choice. Well, if you don't, as long as you're a good person, you can get reincarnated or you can go to heaven. Now, remember that the soul, right, the individual soul of the person, right, is connected to heaven. Right, it is at heaven, for example, that my soul was created. Right, so my incarnation as an avatar, right, was Rudra Shiva, that existed at a sphere in heaven. The archangel Raphael and a Buddha together got my soul, all came together. It was the culmination of the story of all those streams of development, right, that became the creator even of Rudra Shiva, which you might call Parashiva, or just simply Shiva. Okay, and the only way for Shiva to remember himself, because it was meant to be that to remember himself in the story, was to become Vishnu, was to attain the purpose of the Kala Chakra, which was to become all pervading in all the systems, even outside the ones that he had created, right? And basically become the god of all systems, if you want to see it that way, to basically ensure the continuation of all life by creating time differentials within different levels of downward programming, so that if one level went out, it wouldn't snuff out the other ones. Okay, so there was a lot of work to take place, and that basically is part of the mission of an avatar. Okay, of the avatar. So how, going back to reincarnation, how does it work with reincarnation? Well, when you jump into the river, as I said, you're still going to get judged. You're not escaping judgment, but by jumping into the river, okay, you're basically getting fully dissolved. It's a dissolution, okay? But so what does that really mean? Essentially, it's coming back to your default state, going back to your original state. Okay, your being still exists to go through the judgment of God and all that, but basically, that continuation of your being as you had developed, right, in a sense, is dissolved. Right, now some people think that that's the purpose of moksha, right, the term moksha, right, but moksha actually refers to enlightenment and freedom through enlightenment, and not necessarily through dissolution in the Vaitarani river. Okay, and that's actually something that's happening right now, where it became synonymous with that, and that's reflected at the Vaitarani River, where you have basically everybody from Hinduism, not everybody, but lines and lines of people that are jumping into the river, following what the people in front of them they see doing, okay, and getting to the river and jumping into the river all in the line. And what we want to do, as a part of an initiative. My initiatives is I want to basically move that line of Hinduism closer to the bridge, or like right in front of the bridge, so that we can get those first people to take the bridge, and then the line can just continue onto the bridge, and then we can basically deviate the line that's going to the Vaitarani River, so that everybody gets to the bridge, right? And that way that there's no more dissolution in the river, which is basically in a way the end of your being, the end of many elements of your being, although there are still the elements that can be judged and that will be judged, right? So yeah, so basically that's how it works with the Vaitarani River. Okay, now how does it work with reincarnation? Okay, this is a complex subject, reincarnation, but as I explained, the soul basically, and the body, in a sense, the reincarnation mechanism happens at the level of heaven. Okay, so that's essentially where it happens, at the level of heaven. And now we say yes, but you're saying that the line of people, right, get reincarnated. Yes, exactly, and that's exactly it. So to end the cycle of rebirth and suffering, right, as some people want to do, right, and some people think that that's the meaning of moksha. It's not actually that you're supposed to jump into the river, because by jumping into the river you're returning your default state, right, and then basically you're going to get judged by God, and then from there you're going to get the chance for reincarnation, right? But the being that you were that you dissolved can no longer move on to paradise. So your only option at that time becomes moving in to reincarnation, if you pass the judgment of God after having jumped into the river and having suffered, because it's not a pleasant dissolution to jump into the Vaitarani River. Okay, so at that point you get the judgment of God, which you still get. At that point, you're either going to hell or you're going to go to reincarnation. But you didn't get that moment where you're having faith and you're jumping on the bridge. So you're getting another chance, right? You pass that judgment of God. You're not a bad person. You're a good person, okay? But you don't have the faith to take the judgment of God. You didn't pass the test. So you go back into the reincarnation. You go back, okay, you're going to go back into the world, as whoever you're going to be. It could be a good life, it could be a difficult life, okay? And basically at that point, you're going to get back at the end of that life back to the river, okay? And then you're going to have your choice, right? And then basically, once again, for example, showing the example of Hinduism, which believe in that cycle of birth and rebirth, they get back into that river. Once again, the people in front of them are jumping into the river, and they just jump into the river again, without understanding that that's the continuation, right, of that rebirth and death and rebirth cycle. All right. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't be reborn into the world if you go into heaven. However, what it does mean is that you get the choice, right? Because if you go into heaven, now what you can do into heaven is that beings can put a part of themselves, right? There's a technology in heaven to create souls, right? To create new beings, right? To create that. And then that is a technology that's used basically also for what you would call a descent from heaven into the world here, right? So you can basically have that type of reincarnation as well. And the soul is actually composed of four components in heaven. So you can have up to 4 components that compose one soul. So you can have different beings that come back together, that combine together to combine the elements of the soul. And that's part of the story of the mission of the work that was taking place in heaven, which was to attain the purpose of the Kala Chakra, which was to essentially hack into all of creation and become the dominant system in creation, the center essentially, which basically rewrote everything into a way where now eternal life is ensured for everyone. Okay, so very complex, a lot of concepts to understand there, but very interesting as well, in my opinion. Okay, so basically that gives you the explanation of rebirth. Okay, so what you have is basically people that are going to heaven, and once you're in heaven, you're in that place where you don't necessarily want to be reborn. Why would you go through the story again? You already have a good story, you have your story, you're in heaven, you're at a good place now. Okay, you're in a place where you can just relax, right? So you don't have to be reborn, and that's the end of the cycle of death and suffering and all of that stuff and reincarnation. So you end up in heaven, you take the bridge of God, which is the bridge, once again, that's identified, that has the angels waiting on top of it. So as you can see, you have all the different cultures and religions of the world who all have pieces, and all the pieces, basically, they're all true, of all the pieces combined together, which are the truth of what happens to you, and the truth of God, the truth of creation, the truth of death, the truth of eternal life, all of these things, right? So you see, yes, the angels are at the Vaitarani River. You know, you wouldn't think, okay, well, the Vaitarani River isn't part of, for example, Islamic or Judaic or Christian culture or Catholic culture, right? But you have the angels, the archangel of death, which is at the Vaitarani River on the bridge of God that brings to paradise, right? So you see all the different elements that come in, and this is the truth. This is actually how it is, right? And how do I know this? I know this from my own experiences as an avatar, right? And that's why I share this with you. So I just wanted to share this with you. It's getting to be a little bit of a long talk, so I'll end it on that. Thank you very much for listening once again, and have a great day.